Whatever happened to X-Wing miniatures, and where did the game system go wrong? It's Star Wars. It's a license to print money. Now, before X-Wing miniatures was a thing, I enjoyed playing Wings of Glory World War One. And this was a very unique system in that you had to program your planes ahead of time. It's a flight path system through the use of cards. It had different shooting ranges and different ways of resolving damage and interaction. It was a very solid, and it still is a very good system. X-Wing Miniatures 1.0, cloned, adopted, built on this system. So I never had initially in the day any plan to play Star Wars or another war game, but I knew how good the Wings of Glory system mechanics was and still is. You put that together with Star Wars and the fact that they were pre-painted miniatures, the fact that you could buy these ships for retail $10, $15, $20, literally take it out of the box and play it with all the equipment that you need, the cards, the tokens, the movement dial. That was a radical departure from other popular war games on that release, like Warhammer 40,000, where you want to add a new unit. Forget about scale of army. You want to add a new unit. You've got $60 to $80 for the unit. Then you've got to build it. Then you've got to paint it. Then you've got to get it to the tabletop. And admittedly, the painting and building of wargaming, that's a hobby in itself. But in terms of a general audience, literally buy it and play it. When combined with the narrative, when combined with the mythology of Star Wars, that's a winning formula. And it's amazing. I jumped in on X-Wing Miniatures 1.0 literally release day. And the local meta, the gaming community around here, was heavily Warhammer 40,000. A little bit of historics here and there, a little bit of Battletech. At the time, because this was a number of years ago, a strong Warhammer Fantasy, long live the old world gaming community. And X-Wing Miniatures was like one or two players on launch. We got the starter set, whatever the initial ships. Within 3 months, it had caught up table-wise, just informally. Here's the X number of 40K players. Here's Warhammer Fantasy. Here's X-Wing Miniatures. The growth was crazy. Again, because of this trifecta of awesome rule set. It's Star Wars. You don't need to know anything about it. It's Star Wars, and it's literally pop out of the box and play. It was interesting as that grew with the different waves, wave 1, wave 2, wave 3, before we got into epic ships. The community in terms of wargaming, support, tournaments, that exploded. I mean, what took Warhammer 5, 6, 8, 10 years was done in like a year and a half. We were going to local and regional events, the gaming club, and the X-Wing tables tournaments were just as full, number to number of players from the 40K tournaments. And you saw at that time where the gaming systems, revenue, number of players, Warhammer 40,000 was always at the top. X-Wing Miniatures was like 4. Then I think War Machine was on there too. Then it was like 3, 2, 1. And for 2 or 3 years, it was number 1. It was an unstoppable juggernaut. And on a side note, I think that's why Games Workshop it was forced to change some of its long-held policies because it needed to not only compete, but it needed to destroy X-Wing Miniatures. Now, while this was going on, I'm getting all the ships. I'm getting multiples of the ships. I'm getting into Epic. We've got a tournament pretty much every week if you wanted to. I was going 2 or 3 times a month. We've got open play on Monday night. We've got open play on Sunday at the store. Just, you could walk into anywhere and it's X-Wing Miniatures. Not to mention the fantastic community support, YouTube, forums, Tactica, websites, all that. Well, it's Fantasy Flight Games. 2 things are going to happen. They don't have the license. They don't own Star Wars. They've got Terranoth. They've got a few others. And certainly they've built owning other IPs. But at some point, X-Wing Miniatures, something is going to happen. We kind of knew that, but I think the X-Wing community was like, this game, the traction that this game has is crazy. It's crazy. Like if you signed on for like a 5-year license to Fantasy Flight and you're like, let's get some money, see where it goes, you're going to renew that. You're going to keep that momentum going, especially since it was representing Star Wars in such a positive aspect to it. And an area, by the way, ship-to-ship battles that really wasn't represented in other hobby aspects, or do I want to say toy lines or entertainment or digital media. Like, that was there. You could play the battles, you could recreate the battles. But we also knew with Fantasy Flight, there's a lot of expansions. That's a good thing. For a hobbyist like myself, that's a completionist with poor impulse control. That can be a little bit challenging here and there. But we knew there was going to be a 2.0. There always is. Runebound second, Runebound third, Runebound fourth. You see this Descent first, Descent second, Descent third. It's not called Descent third, but we know it's Descent third. You've got TI1, you've got TI2. It's just what they do. They release the expansions. They get you to buy everything, and then they reboot it. Well, how they deal with that community kind of feedback is they'll always offer a conversion kit. They did that when they had the Talisman license. But the challenge here, the first thing, in my opinion, that really hurt the community was the shift from 1.0 to 2. Yes, some rules were corrected. Yes, some things were refreshed. Yes, things were made a little bit tighter over the life cycle of the game and the ecosystem. Yes to all that, and that's positive. But to have a game that had massive buy-in, this wasn't a board game with some expansions. This is hundreds and hundreds of ships. So many players I knew had all the epics, 20 X-Wings, 20 Headhunters, 20 to 30, 40 TIE fighters. I mean, really putting down major, major battles here. And now with like that, I've got to buy a conversion kit. And I priced out the conversion kit at the end of 1.0. I use that as a chance to acquire some last multiples of some ships, fill out my lists. I looked at the conversion kit to convert my entire collection. Now, you could say, Fritz, you don't have to convert your entire collection. Just roll over for some of the competitive stuff and then, jump into 2.0. Well, to convert my entire collection, because we play massive battles and do a lot of stuff, I'm looking at $900 just for the privilege to keep playing with stuff that I have if I want to go to 2.0. So what you saw there immediately was a fracture of the community. Some people dropped out like they always do when a wargaming system changes an edition and they sell their toys and they drop out. Then you had a number of players like myself which were like, I'm not doing the conversion kit. I'll stick with 1.0. And that's what I did. You lost us for a little bit of a time. So 2.0 gets released, comes out. You've got some interesting ships. There was a couple of interesting rules adjustments, but the momentum in the community stopped. We went from maybe 10 tables, and again, this is just local meta. I could walk into Modern Myths on any Thursday and have 10 X-Wing miniature pickup play, casual play, just walk in and play. Just like that, you're down to 3. Tournaments that were every other week, now they're down to once a month. It just like cut the community in half. And there wasn't enough momentum to pick back up. So at that point, when I did think about jumping into 2.0, picked up the starter, picked up a couple of ships. I'll keep both editions separate because the community support wasn't there. That momentum wasn't there. I couldn't necessarily walk into a store at any time and then pick up a game. I went back to 1.0 because I've got all my toys. I've got all my stuff. If I'm going to walk in and set up a game, 3 or 4 players, massive battles, I've got all the stuff. Let's do it. Let's explore it. So what we saw there was a complete fracturing of that community and the game literally dropping from number 1 to obscurity. So now we've got, or we're getting, or soon, X-Wing 3.0. It's just what it is. It's lost its momentum. It's lost all that traction. And other competitors, I mean, I wouldn't say 40K is in the same narrative as Star Wars, but competitors in that it's a tabletop game. You see competitors like that, they've adjusted their life cycles in terms of exclusive deals, FOMO, limited releases, new kits, that they're engaging in keeping that fan base busy so there's less of a crossover. That's what killed X-Wing miniatures. In my opinion, that Fantasy Flight, whether it was intended or dictated by higher powers, making that jump to 2.0 just, that was it. That was it. You should have kept 1.0. You just should have kept X-Wing miniatures running. And I believe and I know it would still very much be here to this day. So I have my 1.0 collection. It's in 3 massive cases. We can recreate one-to-one, put down hundreds of ships, and I still do it every couple of months, every other month or so. We get together, play a big game, roll some dice, have some fun. That narrative is still there. But in your opinion, if you were an X-Wing miniature player, when did you bail out and why? And if you still have your ships and your toys and your collection, how or do you still play it? And if you're a current X-Wing miniature player, how do you see the community? Do you agree or disagree? Where do you think that misstep was? The only parallel that I can kind of draw from was Dungeons & Dragons 3.5, 3.x, 3.0, 3 point something. Everybody loved it. It was the greatest role-playing system ever. They went with 4.0, D&D 4.0, tried to make it an MMO, and they almost lost D&D. D&D almost died in that edition. That was it. They did such a turnaround to D&D 5 and, now eventually rolling into D&D for everyone, that if that didn't happen, and it could have gone any other way, D&D was done. It was dead. X-Wing miniatures, it had that pivot point. It just couldn't do it fast enough or well enough. Curious, agree or disagree?